the whole Liam Kumar Day effect, not really happened.
Nigel couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I've rang up Mendon already said he could make it.
Don't dig this hole. Phil, credit to the guy, he always manages to do well what he has, but he is a shocking personality. You guys got a trophy? No.
It was pre-vet.
No, my life from Rashad Mendon.
Right, you go. I'm a tag, Jack! I'm a fucking tag!
Hello and welcome to another episode of the LOC Report. We are done with the bye weeks, as we said last week, and that is whether we have a guest on the show or not. As you can see, it is just me today sharing the pod, so we have another Commissioner soliloquy for you in today's episode, but don't worry, I'll do my best to bring the entertainment as best as I can. So yeah, we're obviously heading into the real business end of the season now. Only 4 games to go in the regular season. So let's not wait. Let's just get straight into it with the league news. And starting off with the league news, we have quite a few key injuries to speak of this week. So after we came to you with the podcast last week, Robert Woods tore his ACL in practice and will miss the rest of the season. So that's a blow for Gridiron Gang, who could have possibly traded him away instead of Tyler Lockett. Unfortunate timing for that, but it is what it is. Gridiron Gang rolls on. Chris Carson has also been reported now that he will miss the rest of the season as he has season-ending neck surgery. So he's done for the year. Michael Thomas as well. I can't remember when this came out exactly, a week or two ago, but it said that he would not return this year. There was some hope he would return later in the year after that ankle surgery in the off-season. Late in the off-season, it's not going to happen. He's going to miss the rest of the year. I think maybe with another procedure on that ankle as well. So Ross doesn't get him. And Aaron Jones, the big injury of the fantasy week in week 10. He went down. It looked to be a very serious injury. Came out of the blue tent crying. And after the fact, that was probably a bit of a blow because he did just sprain his MCL. So he's going to miss a few weeks there for Bedenators, but that well set up with AJ Dillon as the handcuff there. Anyway, so that's it for the key injuries. In terms of key waiver moves, we have Chase Claypool was added for Carson Wentz by Gridiron Gang, and maybe not the most notable of moves, but you'll recall that I did actually trade away Chase Claypool for Antonio Brown to Ben Necessities earlier in the season. Ben Necessities cut Chase Claypool, so he finds his way back home. And yeah, the story of his season in the LOC continues after be drafting by your goal, traded to Gridiron Gang, traded to Ben Necessities, cut, and re-signed by Gridiron Gang. So funny one there. Julio Jones as well. I suppose this should have potentially been in the key. Actually, sorry, it was in the key injury section as well. So he tweaked his hamstring in practice before the week 10 games, and he's now on IR. So he will miss at least the next 3 weeks. So maybe makes a return for the fantasy playoffs. Cam Newton and Mac Jones were added by UR Gold. Obviously, one of the two teams sorely searching for a quarterback still at this point in the season, so they are going that route, and we'll see how it goes for them. And bucking the trend again, they add Mark Ingram with Alvin Kamara injured. Obviously, I will see in a bit. I played Mark Ingram last week. I was quick there to grab the handcuff and play him. Mike's not making the same mistake twice, as Kamara will not play again this week, so he adds Mark Ingram there to fill in. If you are watching along, I can't see that there is anyone at the moment, but please do comment along during the show, as it's a solo pod, so it'd be nice to get some interaction and where we can. But with that, we'll just move straight on to the Week 10 recap. We do have a marquee matchup for you this week because, of course, we did the podcast last week, and if I recall correctly, it was the Dave Bowl. That is not the Dave Bowl, that is a Week 11 matchup. So we will go to Week 10, starting with the marquee matchup, which was the Dave Bowl. Napolitans and Bare Necessities took on each other for the first ever bragging rights in the Dave Bowl. Both teams coming in on opposite ends of the spectrum. Bare Necessities coming off a 2-game losing streak. Napolitans coming in off a 2-game winning streak. They were 3-6. Bare Necessities were 3-5. Necessities were 4-5. Have I got that right? No, sorry. Napolitans were 3-6. Bare Necessities were 4-5. But Napolitans took it, so they win the Dave Bowl this time, 102 to 86 points extending their win streak to 3, and Ben Necessity's losing streak to 3. Now both these teams are 4-6. Looking down the lineups, let's start with Napolitans. Lamar Jackson on that very weird Thursday night game only got 17 points all in all, but it didn't matter because Jonathan Taylor got 19, George Kittle got 11, Devonta Smith got 19, and Greg Joseph, kicker for the Vikings, got 10, and the Patriots D got 15, getting them to the 100-point mark. On the other side of the ball for Ben Necessity, Andrew Swift, he had a decent day at 14, Mike Evans at 12, Stephon Diggs finally turned up in a big way with 22 points, and Travis Kelce got 12, but the real letdown for Ben Necessity's, ignoring the special teams there, was Russell Wilson in his return. He only got 6 points. Kirk Cousins there on the bench with 21. Wouldn't have made the difference in this game, but it would have made it closer. And this is the first game of the Dave Ball, I believe, so no history to speak of here, but obviously Dave takes the first one, 1-0. So, yeah, looking down the lineups, good day there for Napolitans, especially, you know, Lamar Jackson is one of those types of quarterbacks where even on a bad day, he's still going to put up a reasonable point total, so he's a great guy to have in your roster. Certainly for this Napolitans team, which is clearly having a late season surge, now that they're getting healthy, players are kind of rounding into form. You look at Jonathan Taylor, he's properly emerged now as probably one of the premier running backs in the league. Zach Moss even chipped in nicely. Nice stream there with 9 points. But don't forget they had Booker and Barkley out in this one on a bye. When he gets Barkley back, this team is going to kick up to another level. And they're only entering this with the win. If bucking the trend loss, they would have only been 2 games behind in the division. So we'll see how they got on later on. So they are really, really catching up. And of course, in terms of the 5th playoff spot points-wise as well, they're sitting pretty with that right now at the moment. George Kittle there, again, he was a guy that was injured coming back. He's really being, stepping back into his reliable self. He's not going to be a massive points generator, but he's going to get that decent amount each week that tides you over. Devonta Smith has been a bit boom or bust, but they clearly had a good game here with 2 touchdowns. And then, yeah, the special teams just bringing it home as well. Patriots defense is starting to really... We know what this Patriots teams are like. That the longer the season goes on, the better they get. Typically, September's a year where they're kind of trying to find themselves, and then as they get to this point of the year, they really click into form. So a great team win there for Napolitans, and you'd be hard-pressed to say that they wouldn't be able to replicate this week in, week out going forward. Looking on Ben Necessity's side of the ball, their struggles, they've been there for everyone to see, really, ever since Russell Wilson went down. Sam Darnold obviously coming in and not performing has really hurt this team, because as you can see that it's the exact same situation with Russell Wilson back again. The team itself has actually generated a decent amount of points. If you're looking at the skill positions, they accounted for about 70 points in themselves. I make that there. You got Leonard Fournette, who's obviously become the lead back in the backfield there for the Bucs. He got 9. DeAndre Swift, who's obviously sees that Detroit backfield on a run-heavy team with 14 points. Mike Evans as well, 12 points, solid contributor. Stephon Diggs finally turning up. He's had not necessarily a bad year, but for where you drafted him, certainly not up to expectations. He's been okay, but that was by far his best performance of the season there with 22. And Travis Kelce there with 12 points as well. Again, he's been fairly solid. What their bare necessities down is, once again, that quarterback spot. Russell Wilson, who, it's a weird one for the Seattle this year because it's low-key. He wasn't actually doing that great even before he injured his finger there. Now, he first came back going into Green Bay, where Seattle typically do struggle. You could have perhaps predicted this would happen, but as I say, Kirk Cousins on the bench there wouldn't have made the difference on his own. Really, you're looking to the special teams, more specifically the defense. Tyler Bass, the kicker, got 9 points, which is fine, but the Rams D only got 2 points, and they are not a defense this year you should be hitching your wagon to, and that's exactly what bare necessities have done. They lose another game. They're sitting at 4-6. Points-wise, they're okay, but they're certainly not in pole positions. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go towards the end of the season. We'll go on to the next game now then, which was the Dream Team against Bucking the Trend. 2 division leaders facing off in Week 10 here. We had the 7-2 Dream Team against the 6-3 Bucking the Trend, both looking to stay ahead in their respective divisions, and punch their ticket to the playoffs as soon as possible. The Dream Team gets closer to that goal with a 108 to 62 point win, snapping Bucking the Trend's, I believe, 5 or 6 game win streak. Looking down the lineups for the Dream Team, Justin Herbert didn't perform, which has been quite often this season, but again, 14 points not going to kill you. Austin Eckler, 12 points. James Robinson in his return, 14 points. Tyreek Hill, 21 points. Darrell Williams, getting the last out of him before Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes back, finally paid off that big waiver money acquisition with 20 points, and the Colts D there with 15 points as well. So again, solid day for the Dream Team on the other side of the ball for bucking the trend. A day they'll be looking to forget, the worst they've been for quite some time now, and they'll be hoping this doesn't creep back in their early season form. Ryan Tannehill, who they have struggled with quarterback this year, but today he did okay in this one, 21 points. Dearness Johnson obviously getting the start with Nick Chubb there on the COVID list, 16 points, that's not bad, but it was the rest of the team which completely let them down here. No other player getting over 7 points. Pittman 7. I'll run that in the recap. We don't need to do that now. But anyway, bucking the trend lose. They fall to 6-4. Can't step ahead in the playoff race to set up the division. Dream Team go to 8-2. They do. The history of this matchup is now 2-2 all time. Yeah, so looking down, let's start with the Dream Team side of the ball here. Yeah, Justin Herbert, again, another middling day there. But luckily, Austin Eckler, they did connect on their one touchdown pass. On his one touchdown pass, so you got the benefit of that. Look, Herbert's going to have better days, clearly, but he's also going to have some of these days. That Chargers offense has been a bit broken so far this year. So it is what it is. Getting James Robinson was a big get for this team. He really, after a low start to the season, really did start to perform quite well. And then obviously he got injured and missed some time there. But good for him that he's back. This is really going to help solidify the Dream Team going into the stretch. Tyreek Hill, you know what he is. He's pretty much boom or bust at this point, but when he booms, he absolutely does, and he will probably win you a week, and that's exactly what he's done here with this 21-point game. McLaurin didn't turn up. Very much the same kind of guy. He playing with the level of quarterbacks he is, he's either going to do well or he isn't. And then, yeah, Darrell Williams, really good spot start there by the Dream Team. They didn't have, well, they could have gone a few different ways. They had Corey Davis, Javonte Williams, maybe even Tony Pollard. So good job sticking with him where he's not necessarily been brilliant either. And then, yeah, the special teams bringing it home as well. I do have a dog in the room, so apologies if I have to shout at her, because Penny, be a good girl. Good go. And then on the other side of the ball then, so good day by the Dream Team. But yeah, for bucking the trend, a lot left to be desired. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill had a decent day, 21 points. His faith in him, it looks like it's, coming to fruition finally. Obviously, Dearness Johnson, where he did add him for that money and chose to keep hold of him, of course, as well, when Chubb and things came back. Wise decision, as he obviously helped the team today, and it would have been a much uglier affair if he didn't have him, because you look down, Michael Pittman, a guy who's been very solid, playing against Jacksonville as well, only 7 points. I started Carson Wentz last week, so I can speak to that, where they just ran in for their touchdowns, and that was pretty much it. They didn't have a big offensive day around that either, so it's probably a slight blip there. Amari Cooper, only 5 points against Atlanta, but it was all going to CeeDee Lamb on that day. DK Metcalf, obviously we saw with their necessities how Russell Wilson struggled, and that came through to Metcalf as well with only 3 points. Brandon Ayuk, who has not been a fantasy relevant player all season long really, he only got 3 points, but when you look to the bench here for bucking the trend, obviously between Julio being injured, Kamara being injured, they didn't have and they've already got Miles Sanders on IR, Jalen Waddle, who's obviously been quite up and down, Brian Edwards, who has really been unproven. You can see he did pipe up with 15 points there, but he's not been a reliable fantasy asset himself. So I would just say more of a bad week for bucking the trend. They should be better, but I do wonder how strong this team really will be going into the stretch. We'll leave the injury stuff for next week, but you can see Amari Cooper's on the COVID list there. And then the special teams as well. Really got nothing from the special teams there this week. Only 6 points for Brandon McManus, and only 2 points for the Browns D, but it was a very perplexing decision to play them against New England offense that's been doing quite well. Obviously in New England, they typically play very well as well, so wouldn't make the difference. I can't criticize them too much, but yeah, again, they're not quite out of the woods for just locking up the division yet, so they're still looking to get that 4th or 5th wildcard spot, so they need to be getting good performances in there. Moving to our next game then, we had, it was Ixan against Ross's team. Two teams in the wildcard race looking to leapfrog one another and cement their status with that wildcard. They were both 5-4 coming into this one, but Ross's team surges ahead, winning their second game in a row, 93-68. Into that 6-4 record and holding on to that wildcard all on their own. Meanwhile, Alexander up to 5-5 there. Looking down the lineups, Patrick Mahomes, huge day. He looked more like vintage Mahomes in this one, 46 points there. His by far and away his best performance of the season so far. Nothing else really to speak of though on Ross's team, just as well he did go off. But the special teams did enough to bring it home, 11 points by the kicker Randy Bullock and 13 points from the Bills against the Jets. That's the Bills' defense, that is. On the other side of the ball for Ixan, decent quarterback day for Josh Allen, 25 points, but clearly the difference was between him and Patrick Mahomes here. James Conner got 12 points, Mark Andrews got 12 points, but again, no other player there. Over 5 points among the supporting cast. So we'll get into that in all the detail. As I say, Ross's team go forward to 6-4. The history of this matchup all time now. Ixan fall to... they are now 6-5 all time against Ross's team, so that matchup gets one win closer. Starting with Ross's team. Look, Ross's team is not obviously as good as it was last year, not by any stretch of the word. Part of that has been Patrick Mahomes not being, his normal self, certainly in recent weeks as well. Sorely needs him to turn up to be able to have a good stretch to the end of the season. He did look better. They're getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire back at some point. That will hopefully help him as well. So this could really make Ross's team a threat down the stretch, because you look down, you've got guys like Devontae Adams who didn't turn up on the day with Rodgers, his first game back from COVID. He may have injured his toe in this one as well. Only 8 points. He'll have better days. Kyle Pitts as well. He only got 6 points, but you do wonder with Kyle Pitts. This is kind of the issue with Ross's team. After Devontae Adams now, there is no real guy there who you can count on, because Darrell Henderson, Rams are having trouble. They've obviously wanted to go a bit more pass heavy with the Woods injury. They probably can't do that now, but Sony Michel's eating into his workload. Dallas Goedert is a tight end who, granted, he's one of the top options on his team, but tight ends are only ever going to contribute so much. Darren Waller arguably hurt more by losing Ruggs than he would gain in the attention, because defenses are now trying to take him away more. And then you look to the bench, there is just nothing there. Rob Gronkowski obviously still injured, he should be back, but again, it's a pretty stacked Bucs receiving core. Allen Robinson's been a bust all year long. Shepard's still injured, and it's questionable how much value he has even when he is there. Devin Singletary's obviously in a timeshare on the team with a quarterback that runs as well, and then Kenneth Gainwell, he doesn't really have any fantasy relevance. So it's really all about Patrick Mahomes and Adams for this team, and they'll have to be praying that on a given week someone else will turn up. Luckily in this particular one, obviously the kicker and the defense did, and that was just about good enough to get them to where they did. And obviously Ixan didn't have a great day either. Josh Allen, again, he's been a guy that's had a few rough weeks in there, but he's solid more often than not. Solid again today. It gives you that base. James Conner, even though he's been really good. I mean, he's been one of the best running backs in the league, even with Chase Edmonds there. Chase Edmonds went, but he only got 12 points. I would chalk that more to a tough Carolina defense on a day where Arizona just never really got into that game. So better days are ahead, you would think, for him. Mark Andrews, again, he's been a guy that's not been too good so far. He got 12 points in this one, though. He did okay. But again, kind of with like Ross's team, what else is around these players for Ixan? Myles Gaskin, if you've watched the Miami offense, you really want nothing to do with that. Pat Freiermuth, the Titan for Pittsburgh, obviously didn't have Big Ben in this one, but he didn't do much either. Tyler Lockett, who they traded for, exactly the reason, I was happy to kind of move him away. We'll see. Josh Jacobs didn't do great himself either, but even before Wilson got injured, Lockett was still very boom or bust. He had those obviously huge weeks at the start of the year, but then has been pretty much ice cold ever since, outside one game against the Jags. And then you look to the bench, Marvin Jones, who has now been cut since by Ben's team. Brandon Cooks, who probably comes into this lineup when he's back. Damian Harris did miss this game with the concussion, as did Nick Chubb with COVID. So they're two obviously big parts of the Ixan team, which could have been the difference on the day if they were healthy for sure. So that obviously will help them when they go back. But yeah, the supporting cast very much remains an issue here. And the special teams, Justin Tucker only getting 5 points. Again, it was a weird day for the Ravens. and the Cardinals defense as well. Getting steamrolled bizarrely by a Cardinals team starting PJ Walker, with obviously Cam Newton mixing in for those touchdowns there. So better days are ahead for Ixan. They're still very firmly in the race, but Ross is pole position for the wild card at the moment, and maybe a late push at the division. We shall see. Moving to our next game then, we have Pakistan against UR Gold. Pakistan took on UR Gold, two teams who, well, really needed to get the wins going to keep their playoff hopes alive. Pakistan did currently hold the 5th wildcard spot with points coming into this one. We'll see when we get to the standing section if he continues to do so as he loses this one to a UR Gold team getting a sorely needed win. 95-76. Looking down the lineup, Matt Ryan were late subbing. He was starting Ben Roethlisberger, but Ben Roethlisberger tested positive for COVID, so he had to pivot. He got 1 point, Matt Ryan, 1 point, in a terrible day against the Cowboys defense. But they still got to 95 because Dalvin Cook got 18, Michael Carter got 14, CeeDee Lamb got 23, and the Packers D got 21. So good supporting cast day for this team and got them to a reasonable point total, which is actually quite an achievement, basically carrying the quarterback. So good win for UR Gold. On the other side for Pakistan, Brady had his probably worst game of the season here, 17 points on the day. Christian McCaffrey, he was looked better in this one with 16 points. You think they'd rely on him more with the quarterbacks they were having to deal with. Justin Jefferson got 14. Harrison Butker got 12, but yeah, not a lot else there. Only 76 points in the day for Pakistan. So Pat now falls to 4-6. UR Gold steps forward to 3-7 and barely keeping their season alive. And the history of this matchup all time now. UR Gold are 6-2 against Pakistan. And we're seeing one of these trends developing where, you know, we we know certain teams that have bogey teams in the LOC. UR Gold certainly looking like it's becoming that team for Pakistan. Starting with UR Gold, I mean, yeah, Matt Ryan, if you told anyone, oh, Matt Ryan's going to go for a point in this game, you would have, against the Cowboys defense, you would have been like, what? You know, you're not expecting necessarily a lot. Maybe he gets in the teens. To get 1 point against this Dallas defense, and I know that Falcons offense is short-handed without Calvin Ridley there, and I think Cordarrelle Patterson got nicked up in this one as well because he obviously didn't play on Thursday night. But yeah, to only get a point a week after, he had 30+ points against the Saints D as well, and it was exactly the same setup there. So very bizarre. But it didn't matter for UR Gold because Dalvin Cook healthy, you know, drafted him for this exact reason to put up these point totals. Michael Carter, that early season trade, he's actually kind of come good in the end, even against a rough Bills D. You know, he's getting enough work now that he's actually become an asset for this team. CeeDee Lamb, obviously with a huge day there, probably benefiting by Michael Gallup coming back, meaning he can go into the slot more and just dominate, which is exactly what he did against Atlanta. And then the Packers D as well with a great day against Seattle. On paper, this looked like a very sketchy stream, but clearly he also saw the stat about Seattle playing in Green Bay, because it was Wilson's first game back, so a great risk-reward play here for UR Gold, and it certainly paid off with those 21 points. Elsewhere, you've got Thielen and Mike Williams. Look, Thielen's going to have his days, but he is second fiddle to the man on the other side of the ball, Justin Jefferson there. But 7 points, it's not going to kill you. Mike Williams is the one worry because he obviously started the season as the wide receiver one effectively, but getting drafted late in the draft. He was an absolute steal for UR Gold. But you know, he has been ice cold ever since then. Really, he has really dropped down and not done as much. That is a worry for UR Gold team where it was kind of all starting to come together, and one of the guys who was really propping him up has now faded away. Obviously, you look to that bench, there's not really any place they can turn to. Renfro had a decent day, but he's not a guy you really want to rely on, and Gesicki and Kirk are just guys at this point. So a good win for them. But they've got a lot of work to do to salvage this season. On the other side of the ball for Pakistan, what are you doing, Pen? Leave it alone. On the other side of the ball for Pakistan, look, this team, we all know it's one of these teams that's led by a QB, and they need that QB to perform to get them the win. That was, the difference between Pakistan this week and, other weeks previous. It's the whole reason they've been in the prime position for the 5th playoff spot, because Brady has been putting up so many points, but he doesn't in this one, which is a shame because the rest of the team actually on this day had a pretty decent turnout. As I say, McCaffrey, this team definitely needed him back with the 16 points. Justin Jefferson there with the 14 points. and kicker Harrison Buck had a decent day as well. Yeah, I mean, Brady has a decent day, or someone in this other, someone else steps up to the team. The Ravens, obviously, again, that weird Thursday night game, only getting 6 points there against Miami. You would have expected more from them. Chris Godwin as well was quite questionable coming into this one, only got 6 points, but obviously, Brady's struggles are going to feed through, which is a risk you run when you start players on the same team. And DJ Moore obviously hasn't been the same since Sam Darnold called immensely. We'll see if Cam Newton can come in and resurrect his value, because he's another one of these players like Mike Williams after his hot start to the year where he's just called significantly. And then on the bench, really nowhere else Pakistan can go at the moment. David Montgomery on a bye. They'll obviously be hoping he comes back, and with Justin Fields performs, but as we see with these rushing quarterbacks, they can siphon the volume and the relevance away from running backs. So that'll be a worry for Pakistan here. But as I say, they are in probable position as long as they can keep the points going. They keep their hopes alive at the playoffs. But they'll be up against it to get a wild card or otherwise. Now, Penny, would you please get out of the cables under my desk? That would be helpful. Come in. We're going to have play podcast dog for the next review, which was Bedetonators against Tom's Tyrants. And as I get the jingle, we'll play that, shall we, Penny? Here we go. Or not. There we go. Tom's Tyrants took on Bedetonators in Battle of the losing his teams really in the LOC. Entering this one, Tom's Tyrants with 2-7, Bedetonators with 3-6. So again, very much a case of two teams needing a win to survive. Tom's Tyrants needed that win more, and they got it. Just about 96 to 83 points overall. Looking down the lineups, they did stream Trevor Lawrence, which didn't quite pan out. He only got 10 points on the day, but it didn't matter because Antonio Gibson against that tough Bucks run D got 20. Najee Harris got 13. Deebo Samuel erupted and brought this game home really on the Sunday night or the Monday night game, whichever one it was. 25 points there to get to that 96 and get the win on the other side for Bedetonators. They picked the right quarterback this week. 30 points from Dak Prescott versus the 12 from Matt Stafford. But yeah, obviously it wasn't enough. Only Chris Boswell went over 10 points with 12 points there en route to that 83 points. So small missed opportunity there for the Bedetonators. But a much needed win for Tom's Tyrants. Both these teams are 3-7 now. Ollie loses 4 games on the trot with this loss, and the history of this matchup all time. Tom's Tyrants are now 11-8 against Bedetonators. So looking down the lineups, the stream didn't pay off for Tom's Tyrants. This is another one of these teams that really needs a quarterback to function. Bizarrely, because on paper the lineup isn't bad. We'll get to that in a second. But where Kyler Murray's been out, obviously he's been a big miss for this team. Trevor Lawrence didn't quite pan out, only 10 points here, but luckily it didn't cost them. But yeah, it was the skill players who actually stepped up and brought home this win for Tom's Tyrants. Antonio Gibson getting 20 points against all the odds against that tough Bucks run D, so that's a good result for them. Najee Harris, obviously with Big Ben out, was just going to get volume. He got 13 points. Keenan Allen, 10 points, maybe doing slightly better with Mike Williams obviously cooling a bit. Deebo Samuel, who's been a great late draft pick for this team all season long, 25 points. As I say, he brought home the victory for this team. Nothing really to write home about with the special teams there and the last flex spot. You look to the bench, they really don't have anywhere else to turn either in terms of other players. So they've got to hope this core of those 4 players I just mentioned continues to pile up the points. And they can hopefully salvage their season. On the other side of the ball for the Bedetonators, look, Dak Prescott, again, another one of these teams where they need to rely on the quarterback to get the points. He got 30 points on the day. And it was just the rest of the team, the rest of the skill positions where they weren't necessarily all awful. They're all reasonable single-digit points, but we know someone has to step up in order to bring home a victory. And, Bedetonators were just missing that one player this week. Would it have been Aaron Jones? Because we'll see on the bench here, A.J. Dillon went for 25 points. Aaron Jones did get that injury, so you would think Aaron Jones maybe gets a touchdown or 2 and obviously more yardage, and maybe that's the difference in this result. Fantasy is a cruel game, and it was cruel in this instance. Obviously, Ollie's happy he's got the handcuff there, but this would have given him the win he sorely needed if he still had A.J. Dillon. But this skill group is the worst in the LOC. I don't think Ollie would disagree with me saying that. Playing Devontae Freeman, Emmanuel Sanders, Deontay Johnson, Jordan Howard behind Aaron Jones. It is what it is. Didn't get much from the special teams there either. You look to the bench, obviously there's nothing there outside of that AJ Dillon play. He's going to be hoping that Odell Beckham can get up to speed and maybe take over pick up the work that Robert Woods' injury has in theory vacated. But tough day for Benednaders, 3-7. Both these teams 3-7, still very much up against it. But they're not dead, not quite yet. So we'll go on to our last game of the week then, which was the Podcast Bowl, Gridiron Gang against Forge Flyers. Forge Flyers, the league's number 1 team, entering this one at 8-1 with an 8-game win streak, looking to keep that going against Gridiron Gang, who looking to keep up in the division, and they couldn't quite do it here as they lost 84 to 63 points. We'll start on Forge Flyers side. Aaron Rodgers didn't have a great day in his return again against a Seattle team that was bad early in the year, but this defense actually may be kind of turning into form. But elsewhere, a plug and play of Ramondre Stevenson was a great decision by Coach Leach here. He got 23 points on the day. Cooper Kupp got 12. But the Cowboys D, again, talk about another fantastic stream there. 27 points against Atlanta. And between him and Stevenson won the day for Forge Flyers. So a great coaching job there. On the other side of the ball for Gridiron Gang, the QB curse strikes again. Once again plays the QB of the week, or the QB stream of the week, as denoted by all these experts. Carson Wentz only gets 7 points for them on this day. Wasn't the difference particularly, because obviously Aaron Rodgers only got 10. Another poor performance at quarterback. Story of Gridiron Gang season so far, because elsewhere, Mark Ingram got 17, Ezekiel Elliott got 17. Nobody else really stepped up, which led to this low point total as well. But obviously a better quarterback score would have helped. So Forge Flyers, they take this one, move to 9-1. Gridiron Gang 4-5-5. And the history of this matchup is now 10 apiece for both Chris and myself. Starting on Chris's side, look, he's had a bit of a rough last couple of weeks, but he has had some injury woes, some bye weeks. Obviously, Henry going down, Carson's gone, Mixon's on a bye week in this one. So a very much mundane Forge Flyers team, you would say. But they've strung enough points together. I believe that's 284 weeks in a row in a team where, in 2 weeks where league scoring is down in general. Playing both the Dream Team and Gridiron Gang to get those wins. So solid day. Obviously, Patterson, as we know, got injured in this one as well. Marquise Brown, part of that weird Thursday night game where he didn't really do much. What can you say? Aaron Rodgers, as I said, he only got 10 points, but when Wentz on the other side only gets 7 as well. That's not the difference. The difference here was a plug and play of Ramondre Stevenson, where he picked him up. Ben perhaps should have been a bit quicker there with the handcuff, but to Chris's benefit, a great plug and play there. Because you can see on the bench, there was nothing else. The other options would not have done a lot. It wouldn't have quite mattered in the end, obviously, but it makes this win look a lot better than it would. But it's all about the Cowboys defense. I mean, what a stream. I don't think Chris would have been predicting them only to concede 3 points and to get as many turnovers as they did, and also a defensive touchdown. But a great day, a great decision by Chris. Better days are going to be ahead. This team will get some players back. Obviously, losing Henry is a big blow, but they're certainly there to withstand it. On the other side of the ball, just frustrating from my point of view that I continue to seemingly do the right things with these quarterbacks, and every single week it doesn't pan out. Wentz, it wasn't even a case of necessarily Jacksonville, just doing a great job and stopping them. Obviously, they had the 2 rushing touchdowns. Those were the opportunities on the day for the Colts. They didn't get a lot else going there. And it's just ridiculous because, I'll show you Carson Wentz's points here. He had not scored less than 20 points since week 3. He's only, if you round up the week 2 performance, he's only scored less than 20 points, once this season. And I play him in the plus matchup, and he only goes for 7. You literally can't write this stuff. It is what it is. I did the plug and play of Mark Ingram, which obviously massively helped my team. It would have been Elijah Mitchell who would have done a bit worse, but obviously it didn't make a difference. But you look down, I have Derek Carr on the bench there who got 22 points. I would have had to play him and Mitchell over Josh Jacobs to get the win here. So it was in reach, but would have taken some different decisions. AJ Brown obviously only getting 2 points. He should have better days. Obviously this was without Julio Jones there, so they just put Lattimore on him pretty much. And obviously they don't have Derrick Henry there as well, so he really is the top weapon in this offense that teams are going to look to take away. Jerry Jeudy only got 5 points on the day as well with the Broncos D, didn't look great. And yeah, Josh Jacobs there, who I picked up in that trade. Kind of game scripted out of the game as the Raiders fell behind. Still got his kind of usual workload, but obviously didn't do a lot with him. You'd hope better days are ahead for him as well. And then special teams. Again, Matt Gay, been one of the most reliable kickers in the league. 2nd overall entering this week in scoring. He hadn't scored less than 8 points in a game so far this year. Obviously only gets 4 in this one. And then the Steelers D. I picked up the Steelers D for the 2 games they had, which were... I can't remember who they played last week, but it wasn't someone great. It was Chicago. Yeah, they played Chicago and Detroit 2 games in a row. I thought it was quids in, and they only go for 9 points and 6 points respectively across those 2 weeks. So you can point to a few things that lost this week for me. Hopefully better weeks are ahead. God, I hope to God I can actually get some points from a quarterback for once. But still all to play for in that parts of division. So that is it for the Week 10 recaps. We'll go to the milestone standings and stats. When I can stop Penny being a nightmare. Milestone standing and stats. So if we go to the standings first, so we'll look overall and then look in terms of a playoff race. Southampton division, the Dream Team still sitting at the top there with another win, 8-2. They are 2 games ahead. They are getting close to being able to, punch their ticket to the playoffs. You can look at their points as another kicker here because they are on 1,076 points forward. Ross's team, who's at 6-4, right behind them, only at 9-3-2. So you think even in the event of a tie, the Dream Team is decisively ahead there, that it shouldn't matter. Then you've got Pakistan at 4-6 there, as well as Beserker at the bottom on points. Looking at the Portsmouth division, all teams, Bucking the Trend lost this week, so they fall to 6-4, but still stay ahead in the division because Gridiron Gang lost. If they'd have won, they could have possibly usurped them, but obviously you see the points there. Still slightly behind Gridiron Gang at 5-5. Neapolitans, though, screeching up from the rear. They're at 4-6. They've scored 940 points now, so they're coming right back, and you can't rule them out of this division yet either. We'll see who they play in a divisional week in week 11 in a minute. And then Bedednators at the bottom there, who are 3-7. Their points are quite adrift, so it is quite an uphill battle for them. Looking at the Winchester division, quiet Penny. Forge Flyers 9-1. They've practically punched, or mathematically punched their ticket to the playoffs because Ixan are at 5-5 behind them. And again, Forge Flyers points are 1,100. Ixan behind them there at 9-2-8. So they've almost certainly already got their trip to the playoffs. They can buy their plane tickets now. And then at the bottom, we've got Tom's Tyrants and UL Gold, both at 3-7 as well. So if we look to the playoff view, we'll go to the overall sheet to look at this. So Forge Flyers, the Dream Team, and Bucking the Trend currently holding the division leads. Ross's team there currently holding the traditional wild card with the 6-4 record. The only non-division winning team to have a 6-4 record. Quiet, Penny, quiet. And then in terms of the 5th wildcard spot, which is most points forward outside of those top 4 teams there, currently that still resides with Pakistan. They have 958 points, so today they would be the 5th playoff team. Hot on their heels at Ixan at 928, and then Neapolitans as well at 941. We also have Beserker somewhat in the hunt with 901, my team with 897, and Tom's Tyrants with 893 there as well. But Bedednators and UL Gold, you can see at the bottom there, they have 845 and 800 points respectively, so they're probably out of it at this point, barring some crazy turnaround. If we look at the breakdown, Forge Flyers, as you would expect on the top there, 81-29 through the year so far. Not surprising for a 9-1 team. The Dream Team there behind them at 74-36. They had an 11-0 week last week. Pakistan, curious, they are sitting at 4-6, but as we know, they have that 5th wildcard spot at the moment, so 67-43. It's not surprising to see that they're there. They've obviously probably been scored on as well. Then we've got Ixan, Beserker, Ross's team, all the middle grounders there. Neapolitans started very low in this category, but you can see they're careening up. They're now 7th in this metric, Gridiron Gang in 8th. But then, usual suspects at the bottom. The interesting one here, though, is Bucking the Trend. obviously winning a division, but they have a decisively losing record in terms of the breakdown. They are 45-65 so far this year, so they are punching above with their actual wins compared to perhaps where the team should be. Looking to the coach ratings, it's fairly tight at the top between the top three: Pakistan, Forge Flies, and Forgot to Make a Logo, Ross's team. The common theme with two of these teams is they don't have a lot of options on the bench. Forge Flies certainly have done. Obviously, Chris is doing a great job of coaching this year. And the other two as well, but they obviously have less options to choose. Then you get to the middle ground from 4th position to where are we going to say? It's all pretty tight all the way down from 4th at 118, the 12th worst. So the worst team in terms of points is 166. So really, there's not a great deal of disparity between all of these teams here. True ranking throws up an interesting image because obviously we've got Forge Flies at the 1st position here, the Dream Team in 3rd, and Forgot to Make a Logo in 4th. They are 3 of the current playoff teams. But then you have Pakistan at 2nd, who is obviously not. Well, they are in the 5th position at the moment, but in terms of other things, they're not. But they are a playoff team as well. And then you have Mike's team in 6th. Again, he's currently leading a division, but not on the top of this category. And then you have everyone else as you would expect them to be. So what else have we got? We have some milestones for you. So there is currently a tie for the all-time winningest coach. You can see there the total currently sits at 98 wins all time. Chris is now tying with my dad, which is a tremendous achievement to think of where Chris has come from, because he was kind of where my team was a few years ago, 6th, 5th in this category. After having a few rough years, he's really turned the franchise around to get where he is now. In an equal breadth, obviously my dad's kind of set back a bit, and then you have guys like Tom and Ollie as well who haven't quite pushed forward. Otherwise, they would definitely be higher in this metric. Elsewhere, Coach Nunn notched their 60th career win, so congrats to Ross for doing that as well. What are we going to move on to now? I did have a debate corner planned. Should we do debate corner? Let's do debate corner. Let's find John first. John, can you please escort me into debate corner so I can talk with myself?
Order.
Thank you, John. It's a bit lonely here in debate corner today, but that's okay. Because the topic of debate corner today is which team that currently has a losing record is most likely to make playoffs. So we'll go to the overall sheet here so we can see this. So as I say, anyone with a winning record or at 500 currently will be moving out from this metric. So half the league currently does have a losing record, either 4-6 or 3-7. Those teams are Pakistan, Neapolitans, Beserker, Tom's Tyrants, Bedernades, and you are gold. And the question of debate corner is which team is most likely to make the playoffs out of those with the losing record. At the moment, it's sitting with Pat. Obviously, when Brady plays well, this team is going to get a certain base amount of points, and then I trust Pat to be able to cobble together enough. You look at 4 of the teams here, which I'm sadly probably going to exclude from this: Beserker, Tom's Tyrants, Bedernades, and your gold. They are absolutely capable of good weeks. There is definitely some good teams, some good players in there, but they're just too inconsistent. I don't trust them to be able to, to make up the gap here and come away with it. They certainly could. Some of them could. Beserker or Tom's Tyrants wouldn't surprise me. Obviously, Bedernades and your gold are a bit too far out to be able to do it. It would be quite an upset and a turnaround if they did. But the one you really do have to circle is Neapolitans, where on a 3-game win streak, they've obviously been very hot. They're only 18 points behind Pat's points now, even though they've been scored on a ton. The only team in the LOC to concede over 1,000 points at this point, and that total stands at 1,075. So it's certainly between Pat and Neapolitans for me. I think I'd probably lean Neapolitans at the moment, just because there's a better roster around it. If they can, they've got the luxury of being able to choose between Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson as well. But obviously, as I said in the recap, Lamar Jackson does bring that base amount of points, which you do like to see there. So I'm going to go with Neapolitans. I kind of have a follow-up debate corner to this debate corner is, will we see a team with a losing record make the playoffs? It's entirely possible. because, you look at Pakistan and Napolitans, there's only 4 games to go. They're currently 2 games behind 500. With the loss, at best, they can tie with 500 if they notch that 7th loss. But they're both in pole position for the points forward, the 5th playoff spot. So I wouldn't even say it's necessarily unlikely that we see a team with a losing record or, perhaps a 500 record make playoffs this year. So that is Debate Corner. We will go on to the Week 11 previews. Tom's power rankings, they are now out, as obviously it's a Sunday pod. The power rankings drop on Sundays as well, so you can go and read those now on the blog. He's posted up to the Facebook page, so you can find a link to that there. Always makes for good reading and a good build up to the games on Sunday. So yeah, we will go into the Week 11 matchups. What do we have in the Week 11 matchups? We have Gridiron Gang against Bednators, so it's a divisional week, a key time obviously in the LOC season. We have Ross's team against Bare Necessities, Pakistan against the Dream Team, Bucking the Trends against Napolitans, Tom's Tyrants against Forge Flyers, and You Are Gold against Ixan. Now, there is no other game here for me for marquee matchup other than Bucking the Trend against Napolitans, because Bucking the Trend, they are the current division leaders of the Portsmouth division. Napolitans have obviously had this crazy turnaround. They're in a good position to get that 5th playoff spot, but they're also not eliminated from that division. Like I say, they're only 2 games behind Bucking the Trend. They get a win here, 1 game behind in the division with 3 to go, and they have superior points to Bucking the Trend. So we're going to go that way for marquee matchup. Here it is, Bucking the Trend against Napolitans. Bucking the Trend take on Napolitans for perhaps a shootout for the playoff positions at stake. Bucking the Trend currently sitting atop the division, but coming off a loss, hoping to get another win, which would get them that much closer to the playoffs. Meanwhile, Napolitans, they need to keep the wins coming in order to have a chance at the playoffs, but they're in a good position at the moment, either by points or possibly for the division. They're at 4-6, coming off a 3-game win streak. Projections in this one currently have Napolitans winning it 118 to 83, and part of that is due to Napolitans have had 35 points from the Patriots D, shutting out Atlanta, also getting multiple turnover sacks and a touchdown there on Thursday night. Looking down the lineup, so Lamar Jackson currently in the moment, but he's questionable with an illness for Napolitans, but they do have Joe Burrow to pivot to. Saquon Barkley in the lineup as well, he's questionable, playing against Tampa Bay, but even if he doesn't play, they've got Devontae Booker there on the bench as well. Elsewhere, the rest of this roster is unchanged, so they do send... I'm not sure who they've sent to the bench. They may have... I don't know who. They've probably dropped someone who they were playing last week. But they are rolling out the 31 personnel this week. 3 running backs, a tight end, and a receiver. On the other side of the ball for Bucking the Trend, Mark Ingram comes into the lineup for the injured Alvin Kamara. What else is there? Jalen Waddle also comes into the lineup in favour of... Amari Cooper, Amari Cooper, I would say, someone else they've dropped. So they are going with the 20 personnel this week, 2 running backs and 3 receivers. We look at the history of this matchup. Let's see here. They have played each other once before, and Bucking the Trend took that game earlier in the season. So let's take a look down the matchups then. So injury-wise, I mentioned about Napolitan starters. Nothing else on the bench there. See for Bucking the Trend. Alvin Kamara's out. Miles Sanders should be back. He's been activated off IR, so we'll see what happens there. But Julio Jones is on IR with that hamstring, and Amari Cooper tested positive for COVID, so he's not vaccinated either. So he is on the COVID list and lost to this team as well. Looking down the lineups, so we'll start with Napolitans there. If Jackson plays against Chicago, look, he's good for that base level of points. He's obviously capable of blowing up as well. So that's good to see. If he doesn't play, he has got Joe Burrow to pivot to against the Raiders. So again, he'll be solid from that point of view. Looking at the skill positions, Saquon Barkley, he was really sad when he got injured his ankle, because he was starting to come back into form. Then he obviously got injured. He's playing Tampa Bay, but I believe they are without Vita Vea here, so that run D is perhaps not as daunting as it usually would be. You've got Jonathan Taylor against, again, a tough Buffalo D, but, you know, it's one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL, and he's obviously a great running back himself. So you would back him to at least put up some points. George Kittle there against Jacksonville, he should be fine. Devonta Smith against New Orleans, they've been a pass funnel, that Saints D, but he probably will get the Marshawn Lattimore treatment, so he has been a bit boom or bust. We'll see there. Zach Moss against Indianapolis as well. Don't really like that. They've been a fairly good run D, and obviously he's in quite the timeshare. Dave really doesn't have much else to turn to on the bench, so they probably will go with him. But obviously the big thing in this game is the 35 points from the Patriots defense on Thursday night. That is going to be a massive mountain to climb for bucking the trend. There could be some players in there for Napolitans who disappoint and open the window for bucking the trend to come back into that game. But you know, they've been in white hot form, Napolitans, so could be a tricky one there. We'll look at bucking the trend. Do they have the players that could upset Napolitans? They've got Ryan Tannehill against Houston. That's nice. You think they're going to have to be fairly run heavy with the running back room in the state that it is. So that's a good plus there. Mark Ingram against Philadelphia. Their run D's not been great. And obviously he's going to get the volume, so that should be a good play. Dearness Johnson against Detroit. I don't like that at the moment because Nick Chubb should be back. We do see that Cleveland like to rotate these backs, and obviously they should be able to beat Detroit, no problem. But yeah, always a worry when you're playing the back and less of the workload. DK Metcalf against Arizona there. That's been a surprisingly good defense. What is Seattle at the moment, offensive wise? I don't really know. But Metcalf has been the better option. That, you know, he has been somewhat game proof. He usually puts up a decent score when he goes out. Michael Pittman against Buffalo, again, that's a tough matchup. We just saw Wentz not do much against Jacksonville, so that could be a big worry there for Mike. And then Jalen Waddle. Tua does put, you know, Tua is more better for his fantasy outlook than Jacoby Brissett is, but you know, what is this Miami defense at this point as well? The Jets, not particularly good. They've actually been good against the pass, though, bizarrely, pass defense wise. So we'll see, you know, how good he does in terms of options on the bench there. Again, there's not really anywhere that they can go. Miles Sanders against New Orleans. You know, Miles Sanders wasn't doing well even before he got injured, and that Saints D is very good. And then Brian Edwards against Cincinnati. Maybe bring him in over Waddle or something, possibly, but again, it's not a guy you'd be confident in. I hate to say it, but the projection feels about right for Mike's team this week because there's just not a lot of opportunity that I can see there for big performances outside of a couple of guys. Looking at their special teams, the Browns against Detroit, that should be good, you would think, you would hope, but I mean, we saw with Pittsburgh for me last week, that Detroit don't necessarily cede a ton of points to opposing defenses, but I believe they are without Jared Goff in this one, for whatever that's worth. So maybe they do a bit better here. But for me, Napolitans, that 35-point advantage is going to be too much to overcome, so they will win this one, I think. We'll go on to the next game then, which is Tom's Tyrants against Forge Flyers. Tom's Tyrants take on Forge Flyers in Week 11 of this LOC season. Forge Flyers with a win can punch their ticket to the playoffs, extending their win streak to 10 wins if they do it. They're currently at 9. On the other side of the ball, Tom's Tyrants, they got a much-needed win last week. They're at 3-7 and simply have to win and or put up points to have a chance for the rest of this season. Looking down the lineups, we'll start with Forge Flyers. So Joe Mixon comes in, back off the bye. Marcus Valdez-Scantling comes into the starting lineup, as does Darnell Mooney and Dontel Foreman. So a completely changed roster here. They've sent Cole Beasley, Cordero Patterson, Cooper Kupp and Marquise Brown to the bench. We'll come back with the injury news there. So a very changed roster for Forge Flyers this week. They are going with the 30 personnel, 3 running backs, 2 receivers. On the other side of the ball, Tom's Tyrants sticking with Trevor Lawrence currently. Will that change? We'll see. And skill position wise, they are currently unchanged as well. So still rolling with that 30 personnel as well. 3 running backs, 2 receivers. History of this matchup all time. Tom's Tyrants are, where are you? They are 8-6 against Forge Flyers. We'll go to the injuries now. So starting lineup, clean bit of health, but we look to the bench. Patterson obviously did not play this week with an injury. Marquise Brown has already been ruled as out, so 2 blows there for Forge Flyers and could pick up on a bye. On the other side, Kyler Murray questionable. Latest reports I've seen that he probably will not play in this one. So, yeah, let's approach it from that point of view. Forge Flyers, I mean, like I said, coming out the last few weeks, they posted a couple of 8-4 back-to-back, kind of up against it. Well, can they do the same again? I don't know. That supporting cast outside of Joe Mixon is very speculative. Penny, get out of that. I mean, we look down at Aaron Rodgers. He's going to need him to turn up. He's had this toe injury, but he's going to play. He doesn't typically like playing the Vikings. Obviously, they don't have Aaron Jones. AJ Dillon's a good compliment, but they're probably going to try and be a bit more pass-heavy in this one. Joe Mixon against the Raiders D as well. That's going to be absolutely fine. So those two players, they're going to need to carry them out. Behind that, what have you got? Marquez out of scouting against Minnesota. It's a bit of a dart throw, kind of hoping Rodgers maybe finds him on a touchdown. You've got Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb there, and the tight end as well, who's actually no, that tight end's injured, isn't he? But you know, Rodgers, he has eyes for Devontae Adams. Whoever performs behind him in a given week, it's anyone's guess. You've got Darnell Mooney there against Baltimore. He's actually been the better receiver than Allen Robinson, but I don't know if that's necessarily saying much. Baltimore's defense can be a bit Jekyll and Hyde, so we'll see what one turns up, and indeed which Justin Fields turns up as well for this game. And then Dante Foreman as well against Houston. That's a good matchup. They are using him a bit more. Obviously, they've got the very aged Adrian Peterson and Jeremy McNichols, who I believe might be out of this game with an injury, or he's questionable at the very best. So a very speculative supporting cast there. You've got the Cowboys against KC. Depends which KC turns up. If we see the Mahomes and Chiefs offense that we saw last week, that might be a rough day for the Cowboys. But if it's that turnover-prone Mahomes and not very moving the ball very well offense that we've seen so far from the Chiefs, that could actually be a good play. Going to the other side of the ball, you know, what I've said, it presents quite an opportunity for Tom Terrence to get a much-needed win. So they've got Trevor Lawrence currently in against San Francisco. I don't actually hate that necessarily if they stick with it. Last week they did good against the Rams, but the Niners kind of always own the Rams. There's this weird triangle between McVay, Kingsbury, and Shanahan in that division. So we'll see if the Niners D is real 2 weeks in a row or not. This game is in Jacksonville, and obviously typically West Coast teams going cross country don't fare too well. What else is there? Antonio Gibson against Carolina. That's a real tough matchup. You do have the element of Rivera wanting to go against his former team, but Carolina have been a very good defense this year. Najee Harris against the Chargers. They've been a run funnel, so that's actually a very good matchup. Keenan Allen against Pittsburgh. Again, the Steelers D is kind of weird, where Herbert's probably leaning on Allen a bit more, where Williams isn't doing as well at the moment, so I don't mind that. Deebo Samuel against Jacksonville, that should be absolutely fine. Deebo's obviously been solid all year long. And then Alex Collins against Arizona. Obviously, we've seen that Chris Carson is out for the rest of the year now. And Arizona have been giving up quite high yards per carry, so that might not be the worst play. If we look to the bench, they don't really have anywhere else to turn either. They've got the Buccaneers against the Giants. I do quite like that. But Bucs do play a lot better at home than they do away, and this game is at home, so that could be quite good for them. I actually think there could be an upset here because it's just a case of Tom's catching Chris on a very fortuitous week. I think Chris would say the same. Obviously, he only got 7.5 from Ramondre Stevenson on Thursday night. It's not going to kill you, but it's not the best score, obviously, by any means. So I actually fancy Tom's Terrence to get a much-needed win here and keep that season alive for one further week and snap Forward Flyers win streak. We'll go on to our next game then. We have You Are Gold against Ixan. You Are Gold take on Ixan. Both teams looking to keep up in the playoff race. Ixan's closer at 5-5 than You Are Gold at 3-7, but they both need a win all the same. Projections in this one currently have Ixan winning it 93-90. Looking down the lineups for Ixan, they bring Nick Chubb back in. He's off the COVID list now, so he will be back. T. Higgins comes into the lineup as well. He was on a bye, and Damien Harris as well came in on Thursday night. Coming back from his concussion. So Ixan rolling with the 30 personnel, 3 running backs, 2 receivers. On the other side of the ball for UR Gold, they brought Mac Jones in from the waiver to the starting lineup. Elsewhere, they also have Christian Kirk in the starting lineup now in favour of Mike Williams. And no other changes there, so they are going with the 20 personnel. 2 running backs and 3 receivers. Looking at the history of this matchup all time, Ixan, where are you? You are 4-3 all time against UR Gold. And injury-wise, so let's take a look to the bench. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, questionable. He has been activated off the reserve, so he could be back. And no injury news there for Ixan. So let's cut the music and take a closer look at each team. So let's start off with UR Gold. They've had a couple of players play on Thursday night already. Mac Jones being one of them. I was probably going to add him playing myself this week if it wasn't for Elijah Mitchell, obviously needing his finger surgery, so I couldn't make a roster move. He only got 12 points though, so bullet dodged for me. They did dominate the Falcons, but obviously he didn't have to pass a great deal. But where he lost out, Nick Folk made up a bit. He obviously had a great day with 15 points there. So they do currently hold a 27-point lead in this one. Elsewhere, you've got Dalvin Cook against Green Bay. Love it. Michael Carter against Miami. Love it. I'm Thielen against Green Bay. That's pretty good. CeeDee Lamb against KC in a game you profiled to be a shootout, so that's pretty good as well. Obviously, he's coming off that great week also. Christian Kirk against Seattle. We do know DeAndre Hopkins will be out of this one. Okay, there's probably not going to be any more Kyler Murray either, but it's not a bad matchup, even though that defense is better and the opportunity is there. Looking at the bench, Mike Williams is the big bench player, but it's not surprising given how he's been recently. And then I'm not sure. Do you go with any of the options there? Hunter Renfrow against Cincinnati, maybe he'd be stable, but probably doesn't have a huge upside. And then you've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire there on the reserve. Do you play him in his first game back? Still questionable. He might not even play in this one, so I don't necessarily think Ollie's decision is wrong, and quite honestly, he's set up quite well to possibly win this one this week and get a much-needed win. We go to Ixan's side of the ball. You've got Josh Allen against Indianapolis. On paper, that's not a great matchup, but it's Josh Allen, so I don't think it matters too much. You've got James Conner against Seattle again. That's pretty good. Chase Edmonds is still out. Nick Chubb against Detroit. Kareem Hunt's not there, obviously. Forget about it. That's a great matchup. Tyler Lockett against Arizona. We know what he is. Boom or bust. Russ didn't look too good in his first week back, but this week he could be a lot better. So he's always one of those guys that you worry about when you're playing because he could go off. T. Higgins against the Raiders as well. He's not been brilliant this year, T. Higgins, obviously in the shadow of Jamar Chase, but could have a good day on the day as well. Cardinals D against Seattle again. The way Seattle looked last week, Ross is probably hedging. Ben is probably hedging a bit here. If Lockett does poorly, you would hope the Cardinals D do well, or vice versa. So it could be a close one. Ben actually has quite a lot of matchups to like here, I think. And obviously, Ollie's not got the best of starts from his 2 Thursday night players there. It's a tricky one for me to call this because, but I in terms of names, Ben has the better side of it. He's got some decent matchups as well, but so does Ollie. It is worth remembering Ben's also had Damian Harris play on Thursday as well. He only got 6.5 points there. I think I'm going to lean UR Gold just because they have the points in the bank and we do like to see it. But if Josh Allen has a good day, I think it's going to be difficult for UR Gold to overcome that. So I'm going to go that way. We'll go on to our next game then. And now we have Gridiron Gang against Bedadnaders. Gridiron Gang against Bedadnaders in week 11. 2 divisional teams. Gridiron Gang with a shot to maybe take over the division from bucking the trend if they lose. Bedadnaders needs a win to keep their season alive, coming in off a 4-game losing streak. The current projections have this in favour of Gridiron Gang, 94 to 86. Looking down the lineups, Gridiron Gang brings Derek Carr into the fold, hoping he'll be solving their issues with the quarterback position. Jeff Wilson comes in for Mark Ingram in place of Elijah Mitchell, who's expected to miss the game. As we got Chase Claypool also comes into the starting lineup in favour of Jerry Jeudy, who is on a bye. So Gridiron Gang going with 30 personnel this week, 3 running backs and 2 receivers. On the other side of the ball, Bedadnaders, they have AJ Dillon in the starting lineup for the injured Aaron Jones. Rashad Bateman comes in as does Michael Gallup. So they are going with a spread look this week, 10 personnel, 1 running back, 4 receivers. They send Aaron Jones to the bench, obviously, and a couple of guys to the waiver wire, I think, as well, Devontae Foreman being one of them. History of this matchup all time, Gridiron Gang are 4-11 against Badernators, so they do typically have their number. Looking at injuries, Antonio Brown has been ruled out, as is DeAndre Hopkins for Gridiron Gang. Elijah Mitchell doubtful, he had finger surgery earlier this week, probably won't play. On the other side of the ball, for Ollie's team, only Aaron Jones ruled out with that knee injury, and a couple of players on a bye also. So, if we start with Gridiron Gang, Derek Carr, can he come in and actually get some points for Gridiron Gang? As I said, I've only had 20 plus points from a quarterback twice this season, which is ridiculous when I've been playing the matchups and everything each week. Carr has been solid. He has had a bit of a letdown weeks in there as well. But hopefully, you know, I'm just hoping he puts up a decent day. I'm not even asking a lot from these guys, and I'm still not getting it. Maybe that's the problem. Looking elsewhere on the roster, Jeff Wilson, he's against Jacksonville. It's a really good matchup, obviously. I'm kind of hoping Mitchell doesn't play, because I think if Mitchell does, they're probably, you know, sharing the workload more than they would otherwise. So, that should be good, assuming Mitchell doesn't play. Jacobs as well against Cincinnati. Like he gets the volume. He's not particularly efficient, but you know, against Cincinnati at home, hopefully he has a decent day there as well. It's not been the worst matchup of late either. AJ Brown against Houston, that's a very good matchup, and should be a smash spot for him, hopefully. Chase Claypool, more forced into necessity out of anything. I was hoping I'd have DeAndre Hopkins back this week, to be quite honest. But he faces a tough game against the Chargers. Obviously, Ben's going to be back, so that helps. But yeah, we'll see on that one. Don't really know what to expect from him. And then you've got Zeke Elliott against Casey as well. Again, that one profiles to be a shootout. Casey's defense has been a bit better of late, but obviously that Cowboys run offense is pretty good. And then at the bottom there, we've got the Niners against the Jacksonville Jaguars, so that should hopefully be good as well. But they are away going cross-country, so definitely not without risk. On Ollie's side of the ball, he's got Dak Prescott playing Kansas City, so that's nice because, yeah, as I said, that could be a shootout, so that's good for him. A.J. Dillon is going to get the workload against Minnesota, and, you know, Minnesota's going to have a tough job of trying to stop that Packers offense, so that's a good spot for him. But then we obviously get to the very speculative part of Ollie's team, because behind that you have Rashad Bateman against Chicago. He could do well, certainly with Marquise Brown out. He could step up. We have Emmanuel Sanders there against Indianapolis. It's a bit of a lottery, which Bills receiver turns up on a given week, but he certainly could do here. Deontay Johnson against the Chargers as well. So we have a Steelers receiver off, which nobody really wants to see, but Johnson gets the volume typically at least as well, so he could have a decent day. And then Michael Gallup against Casey as well. Obviously, Ollie's just playing on that shootout with the Dallas offense. Gallup came back in, looked okay in his first game back. Will he get enough targets? But he, you know, he's kind of one of those guys where he only really needs one play to pay off your day. So we'll see there. He's also got the Titans D against Houston, which is very nice as well, obviously. I think this could be a fairly close game, because both teams, they're kind of weakened a bit. Ollie's got the quarterback advantage. You'd probably say I have the skill position advantage, but there's certainly a few guys in there you could see not performing up to expectation. I'm going to go with my team, probably cursing and giving it to Ollie. Obviously, Ollie does have the history against me as well, which you can't overlook. But I think I've got to believe my team's got to get back on the horse and actually get something from the quarterback position this week, and hopefully that's enough to bring me the win. On to our next game then. We have Ross's team against Bare Necessities. Ross's team takes on Bare Necessities. Two teams looking to make the playoffs. Ross's team in a much better position at the moment, 6-4 with the wildcard spot. Bare Necessities losing 3 games at 4-6. Very much need to get a win to keep their hopes alive. Looking down the lineups for Ross's team, let's take a look. What have we got here? I don't believe they are changed from last week, so they are rolling with the lesser seen 13 personnel, 1 running back, and 3 tight ends and a receiver. Looking to Bare Necessities' side of the ball, what have we got here? I don't believe they are changed either, so they are also going with 21 personnel here, 2 running backs and a tight end and 2 receivers. Looking at the history of this matchup all time, Bare Necessities are 7-3 against Ross's team, so they do have the history. Looking at the benches and the injury news here, so starting lineup wise, clean bit of health for Ross's team. Gronkowski questionable, he could return this week after suffering those kind of rib back injuries. Allen Robinson's doubtful, he probably won't play with a hamstring. Sterling Shepard has already been ruled out as well. Both teams dealing with some bye players too. When we look at it then, let's start with Ross's team. Obviously the big question is, what is Patrick Mahomes going to do? I don't know if I said the projections, but Bare Necessity, projected to win 92-80. What is Patrick Mahomes going to do? Which Patrick Mahomes is going to turn up? He's playing Dallas, so there is an opportunity there because they've not been a great defense in terms of stopping offenses, just turning the ball over, which has been the Chiefs' problem this year. But I think Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' offenses may be getting back into their groove, so this is a good spot for him. You've got Devontae Adams against Minnesota, that's nice. Devin Singletary against Indianapolis, that's not great, but it's the Bills' offense, so he could possibly get into the end zone. Dallas Goedert against the Saints, as I said, they are a bit of a pass funnel offense, but he's not a premier tight end. Cole Pitts only got him 2.9 points on Thursday as well. And then Darren Waller against Cincinnati. Teams are trying to take him away more. But he is equally one of the Raiders' best passing weapons. And then you've got the Bills there against Indy, defensive-wise. That's an okay matchup. Indy's offense has been pretty good. But you know, if you can get to Carson Wentz and make him uncomfortable, he's obviously capable of some turnovers. On the other side of the ball there, Russell Wilson against Arizona. Will he turn up this week? What Russell Wilson and Seahawks offense will we see? It's anyone's guess. Fournette against the Giants, that's nice. DeAndre Swift against Cleveland, that's pretty good as well. Mike Evans against the Giants, nice. Stephon Diggs against Indianapolis, pretty good. And then Travis Kelce against Dallas. There's a lot to like against Bare Necessities this week. The Saints defense playing Philly, which, middling. I'm going to go with Bare Necessities this one. Look, they've probably got the star power. They've definitely got the nice matchups. It's definitely going to come down to what Russell Wilson turns up, as it's going to also matter what Patrick Mahomes turns up for Ross. But I think I like Bare Necessities' chances more on this one, and I can see them getting a big win here, keeping their season alive and making it a bit more questionable for Ross's team down the stretch. We'll go on to our last game of the week then, which is Pakistan against the Dream Team. Pakistan takes on the Dream Team in a Southampton division matchup. 94-91 points is the projections in favour of not the 8-2 Dream Team, but the 4-6 Pakistan. They do really need a win in this one. Let's take a look down the lineups. Looking for Pakistan, I believe they are unchanged since last week, so they are rolling with the 20 personnel. 2 running backs and 3 wide receivers. On the other side of the ball, for the Dream Team, Jalen Hurts comes in the starting lineup in favour of Justin Herbert. Elsewhere, what else have they done? They've brought Jamar Chase back in from bye in favour of Darrell Williams as well, which makes sense with Clyde coming back as well. So they are rolling with the 20 personnel as well. 2 running backs and 3 receivers. History of this matchup all time. Pakistan are 2-7 against the Dream Team, so the Dream Team do typically own them. Injury-wise, James Robinson questionable, but he played last week, should play again this week. Davis Murray questionable, I think he should play. No other injuries there, a couple of buys between the two sides. So let's get into the game preview then. So if we start with Pakistan, as they are projected to win, Tom Brady against the Giants. Like, we know from Brady's time with the Patriots, Tom Brady coming off a loss is a dangerous thing. They absolutely got embarrassed by the Washington football team last week. He is going to come out absolutely trying to shred them. Should get Gronk back. Chris Godwin should be healthier this week than he was last week. Obviously, they've got Mike Evans as well. So that this is very dangerous for the Dream Team this week. Christian McCaffrey as well, playing that very soft Washington defense. That's nice. Justin Jefferson playing Green Bay, that's good. Godwin against the Giants again, that's good as well. DJ Moore, will Cam Newton help bring back his value? Maybe. He's played with him before. We don't really know what Cam Newton is at this point of his career. but it could help. And Kenyon Drake against Cincinnati as well. Obviously, since losing Ruggs, they've been passing the ball to him more. He's been getting more touches as well, kind of like the Browns offense with Chubb and Hunt. So that's okay as well. Pat doesn't really have much elsewhere to turn to. He could bring in David Montgomery for Kenyon Drake, which I wouldn't mind against the Baltimore Ravens defense. He is playing the Ravens defense against Chicago, though. I obviously did the same stream a few weeks ago with the Steelers, and it didn't quite work out as I'd hoped. So questionable if that will come through or not. If we go to the other side with the Dream Team, Jalen Hurts against New Orleans. As I said, they have been a pass funnel. Jalen Hurts has been one of these good fantasy quarterbacks, not great real life quarterbacks, as he's put up the points pretty much fantasy-wise this year, even if he hasn't necessarily been that good a starter. Probably should do the same against New Orleans. Obviously, as I said, Matt Ryan absolutely shredded them a few weeks ago with the bare-bones supporting cast. You've got Eckler against Pittsburgh there. On paper, that's not great, but this Chargers offense, they are quite inconsistent. Eckler does have a nice floor, so at the very least, you'd be thinking he could do that. James Robinson against San Francisco, it's okay. Not really sure either way on that one. Tyreek Hill against Dallas. This just looks like the spot where Hill could blow up. Obviously, he's going to get Trevon Diggs, you would think. But Trevon Diggs isn't necessarily the best corner, but, he's quite up and down. 1 minute he'll make this great interception, the next he'll get absolutely flamed. So that profiles as a good position for Tyreek Hill to be in. Obviously, getting Chase back. He had his worst game of the season, I think, just before the bye. They will be hoping he comes back and does well against the Raiders, which he certainly could well do. Terry McLaurin against Carolina as well. Tough defense. Stephon Gilmore is there now as well as other good cornerbacks. Obviously, he's not playing with a great quarterback himself, but Ron Rivera will really want to beat that Carolina team. I don't know. It's not the best one for me. And then the Dolphins defense against the Jets there. The Dolphins obviously have had a really good, couple of last outings. Certainly last week against on the Thursday night game against the Ravens as well. This just feels like a trap game for me, though, for the Dolphins. I know it's the Jets. They are playing Joe Flacco, so maybe I'm being a little prospective about that. But I don't know. Watching this Dolphins defense for much of the year, they obviously don't bring much to the table in terms of confidence, but they have been better recently. So we'll take them for that. And the Jets obviously have been a nice matchup target all year long. Who do I like to win in this game? I think I'm going to go with Pakistan. Brady should carry the load for this team as he has done for much of the season. And then Pat's, supporting cast isn't bad. McCaffrey, Jefferson, and Godwin. That's a great supporting trio. And then do you get anything from DJ Moore or Kenyon Drake or David Montgomery if he comes in? Possibly. Look, the Dream Team have been great all season long as well. They're certainly not going to lay down and just give this win to Pakistan. Definitely not. Capable of putting up a lot of points on their own. There's a lot to like there as well. I say Pakistan, it's definitely a tough game to call. I'm not being flippant by that. I just think Tom Brady, we see with the good quarterback weeks that teams typically have a much better chance of winning. I fancy Brady to do much more than Jalen Hurts this week, and for that reason I'm going with Pakistan. That brings us to the end of the show. So that is your Week 10 recap, your Week 11 previews, and everything else in between. Obviously, we'll be back next week. Hopefully, Chris will be joining us as well. Understandably tired after he did his 24-hour Le Mans at the Race Centre for Children in Need. If you would like to donate to that, go on his Facebook page. He shared a link for that. I will be doing so shortly as well. You're welcome to come watch the games at mine today if you want. There is a high chance Becky will wrestle the bottom TV off of us though to watch the first episode of I'm a Celeb, but I suppose at least we'll have Red Zone on the top. Other than that, nothing else other than to wish you a nice rest of your weekend, rest of your Sunday. Good luck in your matchups. Unless you're playing me, of course. Goodbye until a few days later, folks.